The last section of the exhibition presents the complete illuminated books that make up Blake's greatest achievement as a poet and an artist. The songs of innocence and experience are the best known and most accessible of his poems. Within the simple lyrics lies a subtle play of opposing and unresolved ideas, what Blake calls the two states of the human soul. The blossom of innocence becomes the sick rose in experience. The epic Jerusalem is Blake's longest and most complex poem. Comprising 100 plates of densely written text, the poem is like a series of ethereal dreams. It can be read as the progress of a soul towards enlightenment, but it's also part of Blake's prophetic vision of England, or Albion, as a sacred nation. Hi, Billy.
Jim, incredible colours in these plates.
And having them all along the wall like this, I just wonder if whether you're bothered the fact that these are things to be handled as books, but here they have to be mounted on a wall.
Well, I think it's really our perception of what we think of the art of William Blake, and I think that when you look at the exhibition, you have to understand that the person that we think Blake is very much a 20th century construct, because in his own lifetime, these books were hardly seen by anybody. He wasn't greatly appreciated. I think we see him through our own eyes, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think that the meaning of Blake is something that it's very, very, very hard to discern. If you do follow the narrative in these stories, the narrative is very, very difficult to keep up with, because I don't think it was written as a narrative story. I think this came to Blake straight down onto the paper. He's that kind of classic outsider art writer and painter, in that he just gets it down as it comes to him, the visions that come to him, the ideas that come to him, the thoughts that come to him, I think go straight onto the page. It's even sometimes difficult to follow within a page what it is he's going on about.
If he were alive today, though, do you think he perhaps would be a singer-songwriter? He'd be more of a performer?
No, I think he'd be, if he were alive today, he'd be working out of a shed somewhere and doing page after page of this stuff, and no one would be really interested in him. People would think he was a bit of a nutter. He would be, you know, the classic outsider. You know, he would be writing on scraps of paper, he'd be mumbling to himself in the corner of the pub, and no one would be taking any notice of him at all.
Is that what really strikes a chord with you about Blake, that wonderful sense of being a social revolutionary or a socialist, a compassionate socialist?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really strikes me about him is he's writing about socialism before ideology. So he is basing it in compassion. I think all left-wing ideology must originally come from a feeling of compassion, humanitarianism. Blake is articulating that before it's been, you know, before Marx, before it was put into some kind of ism. You know, he's just expressing how he feels about it.
Which of the works here make you feel closest to Blake?
Well, there's a number of images of the great man around the exhibition from different times in his life, but there's one particular picture that, for me, sums up who Blake was, or at least it sums up my idea of who Blake was.
More than the life mask.
Yeah, more than the life mask. It's actually a picture that was the frontispiece of the Songs of Innocence, and it's often called the Shepherd. The image of the shepherd is in a kind of, if you like, an English Arcadia. He's standing in a sacred grove. There's his sheep. He's walking barefoot. He has his shepherd's flute in his hand. That sounds like a shepherd, but he's looking up to an angel that's up in the treetops there, talking down to him. That's why I think it's Blake. I think the reason he's looking back constantly to that idealised England is because he is seeing the change from a pastoral existence for the English people to an industrial existence. The fact that he was living in London as London was enclosing the fields and building over the pastures is reflected later in the Songs of Innocence, where he writes about the chimney sweep. What do I see? The Briton, Saxon, Roman, Norman amalgamating into my furnaces into one nation, the English. Now, what do you think Blake is getting at in this picture? It's called Enitharmon's Lament. In some ways, he's summoning up the many people that have come together to make the English, which I think is a very modern idea. But he's also put the word Jerusalem in the picture. Now, this is from the Book of Jerusalem itself. And I suppose the question is, does this figure represent Jerusalem? Or is Jerusalem this city in the background, which is signified by trilithons from Stonehenge?
He's always elusive, isn't he?
He is. And again, we want to know what Jerusalem is because we sing the words to the song. And any idea that might give us another insight into exactly what Blake was getting at when he wrote those words, I think everybody would like to have that perspective. In the song Jerusalem, he says, I shall not rest from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand. Now, it would be very easy for him to have said, till I have built Jerusalem. But he doesn't. He says, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land. And at that moment, he brings us all into this idea that whatever England we live in, whatever England we inhabit, we could always make it a better place. I think what it is, it's Blake again being all things to all people. You can read your own interpretation into Jerusalem in the ways you can so much of what is in display in this exhibition, and it makes it possible for me to feel passionate about it from a left-wing perspective, the WI to use it, and also for the England team to sing it as they walk out in the new Wembley Stadium, which I feel it's only a matter of time before we see that. You should learn the words.
Go on then, sing it to me.
And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's pastures?